I think it was opportunistic. I think it was in a moment of high rage.
Information no one had except the person who must have put that knife inside of her.
He had 45 bullets in his body.
The intent was clearly to kill those officers and those first responders.
The reason we've been so successful with the police is because we target on the prolific offenders.
And it's a matter of building a mountain of evidence.
He is a man who will never again walk the streets of this city or any community.
Hello, I'm Dan Satterberg, and welcome to the Prosecutor's Post, where we take a closer look at the issues impacting criminal justice. We also introduce you to some of the men and women who work for justice every day. Today we're talking with Deborah Baker and Stephen Dozier with the R.O.Y.A.L Project. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Dan.
You know, in the juvenile justice system, we still talk about the notions of rehabilitation, and one of the most interesting and important things that we do is to work with kids when they're just starting out in a at-risk life of where they might be heading down the wrong path to a path of crime. Deborah, can you tell us a little bit about the program that you have, the R.O.Y.A.L Project, and how you are trying to interfere with that path of crime?
Sure. The R.O.Y.A.L Project stands for Raising Our Youth as Leaders. We've been in existence since 1998. It's a social service program. It's innovative, it's creative. It is a partnership with Society of Counsel, Therapeutic Health Services, and Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, where we take a young person and wrap a team of professionals around them, including a case strategist and a life coach. R.O.Y.A.L is cited as being one of King County's, one of their top programs for addressing recidivism and the issue of disproportionality. Again, we work very closely with these young people.
What kind of pressures does a kid face today trying to grow up, and how is it different from maybe when you and I were kids?
Oh. Well, media has changed drastically. So what they're influenced by has changed drastically. The lyrics in our music has changed. The incarceration rates of their parents have changed. We know that there's an issue of mass incarceration in this country with regard to youth of people of color. And so with that, a lot of our young people find their relatives in custody, so they're without male role models, and some of them are without mothers. The school systems have changed drastically, or maybe they haven't changed, and maybe that's the problem. The system is behind, and our kids are progressing forward, and so they're getting lost in an educational system that doesn't keep up with them. The peer pressure is very different in that they are promised and guaranteed families in the culture of gang life that they don't have at home, whereas when we were growing up, I think there were more of us that had community around us, a positive adult role modeling around us.
So against that challenging background, how does the R.O.Y.A.L Project try to fill the gaps when maybe the home life isn't perfect and maybe the allure of the street life is great?
Well, what we do is we really teach a youth how to think, not what to think. So we really spend time with them, talking with them about themselves, helping them to see the positive aspects of who they are, and what we help them to envision where they can be. We provide for them consistent adult role modeling and counseling. We provide for them positive activity. We provide for them a safe place, whether they're in a gang or not, where they can come and really just grapple with life issues. We also have them reading very interesting books like As a Man Thinketh, The 1 Minute Millionaire. Our mentor, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, wrote a book called Why I Love Black Women, and other books by other artists where it's engaging their intellect. We are pleasantly surprised over and over how our youth really love to read, and yet schools are having a hard time engaging them.
Maybe they have the wrong books, the wrong subject.
It's quite possible.
Now, the one thing that you said that I think bears repeating is a consistent adult presence.
Yes.
And that's what's been missing in a lot of these kids' lives, right?
Very
Is that
much so.
consistency?
Very much so, very much so. Again, if we take a look at the issue of mass incarceration, if we take a look at the fact that a lot of homes now are, parents are having to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, I believe a lot of adults are just trying to survive, and so they're just even emotionally absent. They come home and emotionally they just don't have it to really give. There's a lack of community because communities of color have been forced to separate due to economic challenges, and so what R.O.Y.A.L does is we're there consistently for them. If they call us on a Saturday and they let us know they're having a bad time, we're not going to turn them away. We're there, and it's a place that just for them. So they understand that while their parents are very aware of what we're doing, and when the youth is with us, they understand it's their place.
So the key, I assume, is to have a team of people of adults who do care about these kids and are willing to put themselves out there for them.
Yes, an African proverb is that it takes a village. And so what R.O.Y.A.L has done is we've wrapped a group of people around them that can provide for them just various resources and in various ways. So they're very skilled at it.
And one of your employees is sitting next to you, Stephen Dozier.
He is.
And tell me, when you meet a kid for the first time and you know they've been involved with the court, maybe they're facing even some incarceration time at the Juvenile Rehabilitation Administration, what's your approach? How are you going to get to know this kid, and more importantly, how are you going to get this kid to open up to you?
Generally, I take the approach that when I first go out and meet them at the intake, it's just, hi, how you doing? And if they open up, sometimes they'll open the door the first time I approach them, and other times it'll take, I'll have to be there. They'll have to see me around, and they'll open up slowly, most of them, because they're guarded. So it's been, my work's been really interesting, and I've learned a lot as I've gone along.
Learn how to listen?
Learned how to listen. I finally figured it out why God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, and it really pays off to listen, because most of the time these children will tell you what they need. They will tell you that they're hurting. They will tell you their goals, and it's, a lot of adults don't take time to listen. A lot of kids just, they've got a lot to say, but they don't have anybody to say it to. And working with R.O.Y.A.L program, I've really been blessed with the opportunity to work with kids and to listen to the kids.
Well, adults like to lecture, based on our experience. We know what's good for you.
Yes, but in my training with R.O.Y.A.L, I learned I would talk to kids at times in the child voice, at times in the parental voice, and I'd get some minor successes. But once I started talking to them in more of the adult voice, giving them options, because if I've learned that you can lay out a few options for a child and let them pick the option. How do you want to achieve this goal or that goal, and lay out some different maps. And when they pick the map, then they buy into it, and they'll put their all into it. Yeah.
Now, you have a personal story that I imagine that once in a while you need to tell to these kids. Can you help us with that?
I was an at-risk kid. I was an at-risk adult in King County. About 17 years ago, I was running the streets just like a lot of the kids are doing right now today. I made a series of bad choices, and as a result, I was sentenced to life without parole under the 3 strikes law for second-degree robbery.
And when you tell the kid that you were an inmate and that you'd been sentenced to life, do they look at you in a different way?
For the most part, I reserve telling kids that, but the kids that are really out on the streets, when I do have to reach back into my history to get them to open up to me, they tend to respond, do you know so-and-so, or do you know my uncle, or do you, and that's a place where we begin working, at getting them to where they want to be and where they need to be.
Because as Deborah said, one of the collateral consequences of having so many people from the African American community in custody is that their kids are out there, and their kids may actually be shaping their own self-image as, I'm going to be an inmate someday. Do you find that?
Yes, I found it. When a child is referred to R.O.Y.A.L and they're asked a series of questions, and I've seen questionnaires come through where kids will answer at times dead or in prison.
When you ask them where you're going to be in
5 years or 10 years,
uh-huh.
Yeah, they'll say in prison, you know, but that's their thinking then. But after we begin working with them, their thinking shifts because they start to believe in themselves. They start to understand that I can be something. A lot of these kids have been beaten down for years, being told, boy, you're just like your father, or you'll never amount to anything. I've shared with the kids that I work with, you can be anything you want to be. You know, there was a joke when I was growing up that, yeah, when there's a black president, we have that. And at times I pulled that out and let the kids know, look, they told Barack Obama he'd never amount to anything at one time, and look at him now.
So there's sort of your ultimate role model right there. But he seems like a distant figure. But you present, you're right there, you're real, and you're right across the table from him. How many people do you have like Stephen who are able to sit down and really relate to kids?
Our program is small and growing. We have a total of 5 to 6 staff that work directly with our youth.
And the best work is one-on-one?
It is, yes. It is cited to be the most effective. There's a lot of research now that is saying that group work is okay, but in order to make a significant impact, you do need the one-on-one. In fact, R.O.Y.A.L in 2008-2009 was evaluated, and we were evaluated against about 5 to 7 other programs in the area, and we were cited to be one of the top, or actually the top. And one of the reasons is because we provide the one-to-one engagement.
And I expect, at least from my experience with teenagers, they do try to show off for each other and posture for each other. Sure. And if you need to break through that and eliminate that, I suppose, to really get them to talk about themselves.
Sure. And I'm not going to say that group mentorship is not effective, because I think there's a time and a place for it. But I think in order to make a significant difference, I think you need both. I think it's more so the one-on-one, so that you do some individual work with the individual, and then you can bring them into a group once there's some clear understanding, once there's been some chiseling away, if you will, of and adding to, you know, that individual.
So Stephen, describe the process. Let's say you've met a kid who's going to be your client, and you're going to work with this kid, and they're starting to open up and to trust you and relate what their vision of the future is. Where do you take them? How do you measure a successful outcome with that case?
Initially, they'll set goals. They'll set three goals.
And that's probably something they've never been asked to do before in their life, right?
Initially, and I will provide them support, show them various alternatives to reaching those goals. A lot of the kids that I meet, their first goal is to get off probation successfully.
Practical goal?
Practical goal. So we're looking at, okay, what are the conditions that you were sentenced under? Okay, you've got restitution. You've got must be going to school. Are you in school? If they're not in school, which the majority of them aren't, which a lot of them aren't, we connect them with the education piece. We do that. A lot of them say jobs. When I first started, I was all about trying to run down jobs for kids. I later came to understand that I have to make sure that they're emotionally ready and understand what it takes to hold down a job. You know, I learned, you know, I came into this green. I've learned a lot working with Deborah. Deborah sat me down and taught me. You know, I thought a lot of what I thought I knew, I didn't know. A lot of what I dreamed about when I was behind bars were just dreams. We're just, you know, this is the real life out here, and this is real world. And people say that you have to be called to do this kind of work. And looking back at my history, I feel that I was called because behind bars, I was working with younger offenders, trying to encourage them not to come back, not to walk in my footsteps. And that's translated to my work out in the community. I'm blessed with the opportunity. The R.O.Y.A.L program is a blessing. And you know, we share in successes with our clients, these kids, as they come through the little things, what appears little to the average person. A lot of these kids have been told they're failures, but when they get their GED, when they successfully complete probation, I'll get calls in the evening after a kid comes through, gets results from a urinalysis test and treatment. Steve, I got a positive UA. That is big. You know, it's the little things that mean a lot.
And to have an adult who is there, who cares about them, is a big deal too. One of my favorite quotes is from the basketball coach, John Wooden, who said, "Nobody cares about how much you know until they know how much you care." And that's what the R.O.Y.A.L Project is there for.
It is.
For these kids.
It is. And a lot of young people test us because they know that there are just some adults that are filling time, or they're there for a paycheck or what have you, but the interest is not the youth. And so it takes a while. Sometimes they come and sit. I had a young woman that I worked directly with because staff said, we're not sure that we can get through to her. She came, and for months, about 2 to 3 months, she just came and sat. And I worked while she sat. And then every now and again she'd ask a question, I'd answer the question, and she would sit. And I just thought, that's what we're going to do. And finally she opened up. And this young woman has gone on to now manage McDonald's. She is attending college. Some other successes includes a client where he is now working for telecommunications, and he's making almost $50,000 a year. He bought his first home, I think, last year.
Huge successes, but they got to scope you out first to make sure that you're not going to be another adult who's going to disappoint them.
That's right. That's right. And so we have to, it's important as adults that we do take the time. If we say we're going to mentor, if we say we're going to spend time with these young people, then it is important that we really ask ourselves the question, do I really have the time? And can I really make the commitment? A lot of times, 90% of it is just time.
Can we do more at an earlier age to try to fill this gap, this bleak picture you're talking about with parents who may be absent, or a self-image that I'm going to be dead or in prison by the time I'm 20? What can we do before the first arrest?
I believe one of the things that we can do is identify youth in our community. One of the things that we've lost is community. And so our youth try to find it in other ways. So when our children bring home kids, we can take them under our wing and semi-adopt them. We don't have to know their whole story. They'll eventually tell us if we're there. And if they know that they can come to your home is a safety net, they will come and they will talk. That's one of the things we can do. We can actually reach out. We don't necessarily even have to wait for the youth to come to us. We can identify other kids because sometimes youth find it difficult to talk to their own parents, and there's just a cycle that can occur. And so if we just reach out to kids that aren't necessarily our own and take them on and ask them the questions, hey, how are you doing? How's school? Let me tell you what I see in you. Let me tell you what I anticipate out of you. They will remember that. They'll remember that a Mr. Satterberg or a Mr. Johnson or a Mrs. Clemens cared enough, and they identified something in me just as well as my parents did, or they identified something in me even when my own parent didn't see it.
And it's like you were talking about, Steve, talking to them in an adult voice, giving them some respect and some dignity.
Yes. And in the Seattle Public Schools, they do have one program, or two programs. One at Madrona. Therapeutic Health Services has a staff member who's on site at Madrona School working with kids that have behavioral problems. And also at Emerson Elementary School and Martin Luther King School, they have the African American Male Mentoring Program, which works with first, second, and third grade children who appear to be acting out and not excelling at the pace that their grade level suggests. And in the program at Emerson and at Martin Luther King, I know that they expose those young men to, they teach them manners, they teach them the proper way to introduce themselves to people, they teach them...
How do they, what's the proper way?
The proper way, they'll come look you in the face, Dan, and say, excuse me, but my name is such and you are? And they will shake your hand with a firm handshake and tell you it's a pleasure to meet you.
You have to be taught to make eye contact.
They're taught. And they're taught very well. You know, I'd really love to see that kind of program throughout the Seattle Public Schools, because we work with them when they're involved in the criminal justice system. But there's two ends of the rope, but we need to work from both ends.
Well, if we could take a step back and give some kids some self-confidence at an earlier age, maybe they wouldn't fall into that easy path of crime.
That's what I believe.
And I think it's important also for our educational system to remember, those of us who are working in the educational field, to remember that these are our youth. And one system isn't separate from the other. I think that's another reason we lose them. If teachers are having problems with students, sometimes they just give up and they disengage, and then when we're trying to reconnect them back into school, the educational system really doesn't want to be bothered. We really have to understand that this is a community issue, and it's not one system versus another, one set of kids versus another. This is our future. These are our youth.
And there are no kids who are lost cause.
Never, never. I understand prevention and I appreciate it, and it is effective. We must do it. We have to have it. But I tell you what, I can't tell you the number of kids that have come back to R.O.Y.A.L and who are still coming back and saying, we didn't have you. We have a young lady that's working for one of the pro teams in Baltimore, and she Facebooked me and said, if I didn't have you, I don't know where I'd be. That's a success, and so we can't give up just because they're in the system. We don't know what circumstances evolved that got them there. We don't know. We don't know. Not all the kids are bad and knocking people in the head because that's really what they want to do. They may somehow have been misguided. They may have just been a victim of circumstance themselves, not taking away. We don't want to take away the notion that they're responsible. But these are impressionable youth yet and still. And still a work in progress, still redeemable. We can turn that, turn that corner and make, we want to make taxpayers out of them, right? Yes. That's our goal. Well, thank you for the work you do in the community, Stephen Dozier, Deborah Baker, and thank you for coming on the Prosecutor's Post. If you'd like to find out more about our Prosecuting Attorney's Office and other programs that we're working on, please visit the website on your screen. I'm Dan Satterberg. Thanks for joining us.